Okay, happy Wednesday. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Isabel, and a special welcome to the residents of Glengordon. Welcome to our new normal, and thank you for joining us on a virtual project update of Edmonton's Valley Line Southeast. Today's presentation will be led by the Communications Manager of Transit Valley Line LRT, that's Dallas Lindskog. And just a few housekeeping items here that if you would like to submit a question or comment during the presentation, we'll be taking questions and comments for the entire tier of the presentation. You can just hit the Q&A from your phone or tablet, which will be at the bottom, and it will be the second one from the left, or on your desktop/laptop, you can find it on the Q&A just on your top left. If you get out of the full screen mode, you should be able to see it, because when you're in full screen, you will not be able to see it. And without further ado, Dallas, you can take over.
Thanks, Isabel. Appreciate the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining us today. It's a new normal for sure. The way Isabel described it is absolutely accurate. I spend a lot of time staring at a little camera on a laptop these days, so would have rather been staring at all of you and where you're at, but I appreciate that you took the time to join us virtually for this presentation today. So we're gonna go through a number of different topics, starting with project introduction. You can see them on your screen right now, and take you through some of the features and a little bit about the testing, and certainly we're going to talk about safety. We also will touch on a little bit about what we're doing to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And then we'll focus a little bit also on just the uniqueness and specifics of the Bonnie Doon area, which is of course close to you at Glengordon that are joining us today. And then we'll wrap up with questions. So all this should take, probably just a little bit shy of an hour. Hopefully those of you that watch this, because we are recording this and watch it in the future, it's Wednesday, the 19th of August, 2020. But hopefully you guys take the time to sit down and listen to this and watch this whole presentation online as well. I'm sure you'll learn something from it. So with that, we might as well dive right in. So a little history on the project for those of you that may not be aware, or maybe new to Edmonton and have wondered what we've been doing for a while. We're in the midst of building a 13-kilometer long portion of the future Valley Line for the part of the Edmonton transit system. So the Valley Line runs from the south end of the city right now, where we're working in Mill Woods at about 28th Avenue. And it runs straight north, crosses the river, and the first phase that we're building ends in downtown. This is a P3 project. Our partners are with the city and, of course, our financing group. That's the public-private partnership side of the equation. And, you know, this line is a unique system for Edmonton. It's not like the two lines that exist right now, which are Capital and Metro, insofar as it's a low-floor system. That's what it's called. And what that really means is the train sits lower to the ground, the platforms are therefore lower, and everything kind of rides a little bit more integrated with the community. It goes at about the speed of traffic, except for when it's separated and elevated above the traffic, it'll go a little faster. But generally speaking, the whole theme of the Valley Line is to integrate with the community and to obviously support our endeavor to take cars off the road, but most importantly, just to create connectivity from neighborhood to neighborhood across the city, and for the first phase here, certainly from the south into downtown. There are 11 train stops in total. These stops are basically, you're going to see some pictures in this presentation, but they're a large bus stop, I suppose is the way to describe it. They are not as big and as tall as some of the stations that you're used to seeing on the Edmonton transit system. And then we have one unique elevated station in the area of 75th Street and Wagner Road. We're going to show you some pictures of that as well. And integrated with that is a transit station for buses to come and pick up, drop off, of course, and also a large park and ride facility. So we'll show you some of that. So a pretty unique project. It's a 5-year project. We are well into that process, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it looks like as we near service commencement, or when riders will be on the train, and you'll have the privilege of riding those trains. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the 83rd Street area right now. So go ahead to the next slide. This is a portion just a little bit, I guess, south of where Glengordon is right now. And you probably recognize it. This area has seen a lot of landscaping going on this summer. We're in the midst of doing that right now. You can see that in the picture. I'm going to talk a little bit about traffic lights and bus stops and some pedestrian access in the next few slides here. And I'm going to introduce you to the overhead catenary system as well, which, sorry, I hit my mute button accidentally, which powers the button, powers the train. I'm going to put that little remote down so I don't accidentally hit it again. And then I'm going to take you through some of the details of the Bonnie Doon train stop. So let's talk about landscaping. All right, so this is an area now on 83rd Street looking north. You'll see it across from the school there. This is a fairly typical scenario for geometry, we call it anyways, with the track running down the middle of the road and one lane of traffic on either side of it, separated by a boulevard and a separate sidewalk. You're looking obviously straight down the sidewalk here, but there's a great deal of landscaping planting beds that are on the project. We are planting 85,000 shrubs along the 13 kilometers and about, I think it's 13,500 trees in total as well. So we're excited to see over the next few years as these plants get to their mature height and start to get their colored foliage and flowers, they're going to look beautiful. And one of the things I'll point out now is the landscape and design across the project it's kind of featuring two different things to bring visual interest. The first one is patterning, certain angular type patterns, even as how the bushes are planted in such a way that they aren't necessarily square to the world, as I like to say. They're actually at an angle in some cases, and the trees are back and forth, that sort of thing, as far as three of one species and three of the next species, that kind of thing. In the winter, you're going to find that the landscaping we are planting has colored leaves that are meant to plant species that don't necessarily drop their leaves, and that's meant to break up our typical whites and browns that we're used to seeing for 6+ months of a year. So that's something that we've been focused on too when we've been selecting the species that we plant. Moving on to pedestrian access, traffic lights in the bus stop locations. Nothing too surprising or unusual here. You're going to see as you drive along the alignment a lot of this infrastructure being installed right now. I encourage you to pay attention to the ones that are not bagged. So you can see in the picture here on the left that some of the fixtures are covered. Obviously, that's because they're not part of the current traffic flows. But if they're unbagged, of course, follow the signals that are being displayed to you. A lot of that is just new infrastructure. There's a few locations along the alignment where new signalized intersections have been introduced, or because of the train coming through, some streets have been slightly modified, so that requires a signal. And in some cases, there's been pedestrian crosswalks added as well to support the train, and that has signal infrastructure as well. Moving on to a little bit about pedestrian access. Much like I mentioned before, we have a combination of either a separate sidewalk, the top right corner is what you're seeing there, and in some cases a monolithic sidewalk. Curb ramps are typical, that exists everywhere in the city now, nothing unusual there, and so that provides good accessibility for wheelchairs and that sort of thing. So I guess the other thing I'd point out here in the bottom right corner, I want to just make sure people that are watching this and you folks watching today that over the next few months, things are still changing for sure. And as you are walking about the area of Bonnie Doon and anywhere along the alignment, if you come across a barricade across the sidewalk that says it's closed, please don't walk around it. Obviously, it's not impossible to do that. You could step out into the planting bed as you see there and walk around it, but we really want to keep you safe. And to do that, please follow the signage and make sure that you're staying on the designated routes. Let's talk about OCS infrastructure. Oh, wait. Maybe I'm out of order here a little bit. That's probably my fault. The 83rd Street construction for the Bonnie Doon train stop is what you're looking at right now. So you can probably, some of you look out your window and see this. This was one of the first stops to have its steel, above ground steel erected. So you're looking at the shelters, or the beginnings of the shelters. There will be additional glass walls and more typical enclosures coming in the coming weeks. They are also heated. But this is a good indication of what the stops will look like. You can see how low the platform is. You will step directly off of that platform onto the train. That height, if you look at the rail compared to the height of the platform, there's a small ramp on either end to walk up and get easy access, good for wheelchairs and good for seniors and scooters, walkers, that sort of thing. It's fairly easy to go up that slope. It's been designed accordingly. We have the yellow strips along there. to provide an indication for visually impaired people and just the general public that you're approaching the edge of the platform. And I would also point out that we've got colored concrete. So as part of our architectural design, something we call sustained urban integration, we are employing a lot of colored concrete along the alignment. So you'll find that our track concrete is a separate color in a lot of areas from the typical black asphalt. You'll also see that the platforms of our stops are colored concrete as well, just to create some visual interest and beautification. Moving on to the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about now the overhead catenary system. So what that is the power system that provides power to the train. If you've been down in the south end of the project along 66th Street and 75th Street, you'll see a lot of this cable already installed, already tensioned, and actually functioning and providing power to the trains when they make an appearance on the alignment. And I'll talk about that more in a bit. But so these poles are being put up all along the alignment right now, and this is a really good indication of where we're at as far as progression of construction and advancing towards passenger service. Obviously, the train needs power, so those lines need to be there, and we can't commission the train until those lines are there as well. So there's very limited things we can do, at least with the train, without power being supplied. I'll talk more about the train as we get further into the presentation. So I just encourage you to pay attention to the poles that are going up, and that will give you an indication as we move from the south towards downtown as far as how close we're getting to passenger service. This is just another look on 83rd Street, looking straight down the alignment for an interesting view. You won't get that view very often. I don't encourage you to stand there unless you're crossing the street, and even then, I don't encourage you to stand there for very long. So an interesting perspective here. We'll move on to the next slide. All right, so I want to move into a bit more of some focused talk on some of the features along the alignment. So we've been kind of focusing on 83rd Street. I'm going to start now in the north end of the project, and I'm going to walk you through some of the pieces of infrastructure that have been going up for the last few years, and then we'll end towards the south end. So we'll begin here looking at downtown Edmonton. This is on 102nd Avenue, just west of 95th Street. So this is immediately adjacent to the Chinese Elders Mansion. So we're on the very edge of Chinatown in Edmonton. This is the tunnel portal. This is where the train exits the ground and comes out onto the street along 102nd Avenue. Obviously, you can see the red steel there. That's meant to be themed traditionally for Chinese red, and a lot of the infrastructure, or sorry, the decorative components are not yet added to this structure. You'll see a lot more features that'll reflect the Chinese culture for sure, and that's something we're really proud of. The community here has been very gracious to us, especially this summer. We've had this road closed. What you're looking at right now is actually a closed chunk of road, and we're currently building the final roadway here with paving stones and all the beautification that goes in there as well. So we're very grateful to that community for allowing us to close the street for a few months this summer. Moving on to the next area, I want to show you some pictures of the tunnel. So this is definitely a view that you'll not have really almost ever. You can see in the left picture, the orange one here, what you're looking at there is the waterproofing liner. So that was installed this past year. It's completely done. On the top right side is the concrete liner, or the concrete tunnel has been poured. You can see that our rail is now being installed as well. There is not 6 rails or 7 rails on a train. Obviously, we're just storing some rail in there. But we're at the stage now where the concrete work is essentially done, and we're moving into installing the rail and installing the cable systems that provide communications and power through the tunnel. So we're excited to see the completion of the tunnel here in the coming months. It's almost done. It's been a lot of fun doing that, a lot of challenge, certainly a lot of risk associated with the tunnel. But going into this project, we thought that was the highest risk. It turned out to be a fairly straightforward excavation, and we're grateful for that. So we're looking forward to getting the trains through that tunnel, and I think you'll enjoy the view when you're in the trains. Moving on to the next slide, this is the feature bridge across the river. This is the Dewatnow Bridge. This is located where the former Cloverdale Footbridge crossed the river. If you've been out into the river valley in the last couple days or last week, you would have noticed that our 7th cable stay and final cable stay is installed. That is the top cable on the in the picture there. I was actually out on the bridge yesterday with a group of people, and I can tell you that the final tensioning of that cable is happening today. And what that will do is bring the outer ends of the bridge perfectly in alignment with where they need to match up with the structures on either side. Those pours are scheduled to happen in the coming weeks. By the end of September, our closure pour, which is just beyond the orange tarps in the top right corner, that final 1 meter piece of bridge will be poured in September, and that will complete the bridge deck across the river. Once that's done, the bottom right corner, you can kind of see the pier there, and you can see an opening in that. That will provide access for an underslung pedestrian walkway. So as soon as the concrete bridge deck is poured, we'll be moving on to the underslung pedestrian walkway. That will be constructed from the river berms using cranes on both sides, and that will occur over the course of this winter. Come next spring, we'll be in there doing some asphalt surfacing combined with some decorative wood surfacing that the pedestrians will walk on. And as soon as that's done, we'll also be able to, as that sidewalk nears completion, we'll be able to start removing the river berms. Once those river berms are done, we'll be able to move into a phase where we're kind of moving out of the area. We'll take down our laydown yards on both sides, and we'll start our construction to reestablish Louise McKinney Park and Henrietta Muir Park on either side of the river. That's going to allow us the ability to reconnect the trail system that's currently closed in the river valley. We're excited to open pedestrians across the bridge, and that's going to happen early summer next year. So watch for that. Like I say, as you see the pedestrian walkway come across and as you see the river berms remove and the parks come back to life, that's another indication for you of where we are in relation to getting to a point where we have passengers on our trains. Let's keep moving. So heading a little bit further south here, just off the bridge, you can see in the distance one of the pyramids for the Mud Art Conservatory. This is just a look inside our elevated girder structure. Those 4 ridges, 2 on each side, are what supports the rail. Nothing really fancy here, just thought I'd show you a picture, not an area that or a view that many people will get until you're riding on the train. And while I say that, I'm thinking to myself, something that's unique about our train system is, obviously it's driven by a driver, so there's somebody at the front of the train. But if you've been in the cars, they've been on display a few times, you'll be able to stand at the front of that car and look out over the shoulder of our operator and see the view that you're seeing right now as the train goes down the track. That's something that's a little bit unique compared to the current rail or cars that the city is using right now. So I think you'll enjoy that, much like maybe if you're riding at the upper level of the 2-level buses that come out of Sherwood Park. This would be kind of a unique experience just to feel like you're right at the front of the moving vehicle. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to take you now a little bit further up Connors Hill. This is the, I'm not even going to try and say it today. I didn't practice enough, but I'm not even going to try it. I'm not even going to try it. But what I'll tell you here is this is a pedestrian bridge that did exist previous to the LRT coming through. However, the previous bridge was a little too low. It wasn't tall enough in the air to be able to allow the train to pass underneath it. So we've replaced that structure a little bit taller. You can see it in the picture here. We've added some decorative features. The railings are a bit of a wave, that sort of thing, and made it a little bit more unique. Now, this structure is currently nearing completion. In the coming weeks, we'll be closing the bridge here shortly just to do the final deck surfacing. Right now, you can see it's just out of plywood and some temporary decking. That's just to allow pedestrians use of it in the interim, but we're going to be in there very shortly doing the connections at both ends of the bridge to the abutments and just finally joining up the trail system. So we're excited to see that open in its final configuration here in the coming weeks, certainly before the snow flies. Moving on to 95th Avenue, really just again showing some of the landscaping that goes in. This is across from Montgomery Place, if you're familiar with that center. Another area where the track is running down the middle of the road, and also just another demonstration that, we're very aware of the businesses that are along the alignment. And in some cases, it's a tight fit to get the road and the track through, but we've gone out of our way with our partners, the city, to find ways to provide sidewalk connections and increased connectivity to those businesses. So if you're in that area, Lee's Food Mart, we're really appreciative of their accommodations at that store, and I think they're happy that we're almost out of that area as well. So again, just another look at the Bonnie Doon train stop here. Not much more I'll say here, so I think we'll just skip past this slide for today. All right, I'm going to move now down the alignment. We're past Bonnie Doon, we're past 83rd Street, where we looked at the beginning of the presentation, and now we're at the Davies Elevated Station. Now, this is the one station that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation. A few features here. Obviously, like I mentioned before, it's a transit center. It's a very central place for people to get on and off the train and to get connections to buses and to taxis and the park and ride. The park and ride, I should mention, is 1,300 stalls. So there'll be plenty of parking at this location. The station itself, the roof you'll see there, just want to confirm that I'm still on. My computer went off for a sec. Isabel, are you still hearing me?
Yep, we can still hear you. Yeah.
I think it was just my screens with the screensaver. All right, so what I was about to say is the roof of the Davies station is made out of just individual pieces of timber. These were locally sourced, individually stained and prepped for installation, and then one by one nailed into place. Very beautiful looking roof. When you get inside there, you'll agree, I'm sure. One of the unique views that this station provides is the bottom right corner. So if you were to imagine that you're on the very end of this station looking towards the north, and if you were to back up a little bit, you'd even see this wooden roof above your head. It just provides a beautiful frame over the city skyline. We had the mayor of Edmonton out on site last summer. I think he was actually one of the first people to kind of stand back and say, well, that's a really neat view of downtown, just like a picture, like a perfect frame. So we like to say we designed it intentionally and aimed everything to face in that direction, but I have to admit we didn't. It's just kind of how things worked out. Maybe somebody at the city did when they provided us the details, but we're certainly proud of that station. About a block to the south, you'll come to our operations and maintenance facility. Now, this is the large blue building and gray building that you see being constructed just off of White Mud Drive at 75th Street, or 66th Street as it transitions there. This is the facility that houses all of our trains and where all the maintenance will be occurring. You can see in the top right corner there's a W1 is a wash bay, so the trains pull through there and get washed whenever necessary. And then you have 5 storage bays. Now, those 5 storage bays hold the trains that are necessary to launch in the morning for sure. So if you think about an Edmonton winter and the cold winter, part of our design was to give the trains the best chance to start the day out warm. So who doesn't like to get into a warm vehicle? I think we all do. So that's what our intent was, of making sure that we had indoor storage for our trains. Those trains will be kept nice and cozy warm all evening, and then they'll be ready to run out in the morning, even in the midst of winter. You can see a couple of the trains stored there right now in the bottom right corner. We have 13 trains right now on site. The 14th is just days away from arriving. I believe it's actually making its way across the country right now. They're assembled in Kingston, Ontario by our partner Bombardier. A great deal of testing and commissioning is done on that end of the country before they're shipped by rail, in fact, across here. So we're expecting to see the 14th train here shortly, and we will have all 26 trains in Edmonton by the end of the year. Another interesting feature, kind of flipping back to the overhead catenary system, is this interesting device here that raises the wires, and that's so that high loads or oversized loads that are coming down 75th Street from our industrial area of the alignment and wanting to turn onto White Mud Drive and head east out of the city, in order to accommodate that oversized load corridor that the city has defined, we've had to accommodate a means to lift those lines up easily and quickly and back down again. This will generally occur almost exclusively, actually, at night when the trains aren't operating. But our controllers can remotely hit a button and watch these things come up and lift the line, and the load can go underneath. Moving to the next slide. This is now some more landscaping in the area of 66th Street. So I wanted to show this just because it's very close to completion. It's a great place if you haven't been down into the south to go have a look at what this line is going to look like at the end of the day. Another thing to note here is the way the rail is fastened to the concrete track bed. This is called direct fixation. Because 66th Street offers a little bit more space than other areas of the city, the ability to kind of spread things out and not have to have a track that can accommodate emergency vehicles driving over it for emergency reasons. The ability was provided to mount the track using direct fixation like this rather than embedding it. Maybe if I see a picture later on, I'll describe the embedding. I think I missed that earlier on, but this rail is just set up on top of the track, kind of traditionally like what you see there. You can also see in the bottom right corner, we've installed some noise attenuation walls for the residents along there. Now, I don't want you to think that the train is loud because of that. This train moves incredibly quietly. We've done a noise study. We have very tight tolerances and requirements to meet when it comes to noise. And in order to do that, we did a very detailed engineering study and determined where and how tall our noise walls needed to be. But I want to encourage you to be very aware of your surroundings. Don't expect to be able to hear the train coming very easily when you're walking. The reality is it moves very silently along the track. So please pay attention to the signage and all of that. We'll be doing some more safety education as we get closer to service commencement and passenger service. So watch for that. We'll be partnering with the Edmonton Transit to do that education in the coming months. Moving to the next slide here, just another picture of some of our stops. You can see really just a different view than what we saw at Bonnie Doon. The roof isn't on here. Not a whole lot I'll say here different. Again, just it's an interesting feature. I suppose what I was going to say here, though, if you see in the background of the picture on the right, you can see the shiny silver or chrome type cabinets. That's an indication to you that our commissioning is well underway now. You can't commission unless the cables are pulled. So I would encourage you to, well, not encourage, I guess I'm just telling you that there's an awful lot of cables being pulled right now. It's just very difficult to see that work happening. Obviously, the wires are underground and being pulled through conduits that have already been installed. But knowing that these cabinets are on the platform tells you that the cables have now been run to those, or able to be run to those cabinets. The connections are being made, and the tests of those connections are now being made as well. So we're entering a phase in the Mill Woods area of commissioning. We've had the train out on the tracks a few times. It doesn't come out very often. It's a little bit shy. But the reality is there's not a whole lot of tests that it needs to do right now out on the track. Like I said before, a lot of those tests were done in Kingston. But we do have to duplicate some of them out on the alignment here as well. So a lot of the testing that's going on right now is really just checking wires and making sure that all of that is ready for the train and all the communication systems are working. Just a few more pictures here of the grain unstop and work happening in the Mill Woods area. Moving on to the next slide is a throwback actually to you, Isabel. I'm going to let you talk here for a second.
That's actually, this is my slide now. Just a reminder that if you have any questions or comments based on the information that you've heard so far, you can use your app if you're using your phone or tablet. Just at the bottom there's a Q&A that you can tap on. Or if you're using your desktop or laptop, you can find the Q&A just on the top left of your screen. You'll have to exit full screen mode just to see that if you are already in full screen mode. That's it. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask whoever's driving the slides here right now, if you wouldn't mind, go back to our crossing bridge, pedestrian bridge over the Connors Road. I'm going to teach people listening here how to say the word. So just quickly, while you were doing your slide there, I researched how to say the word. So I'm going to make an attempt here. So the way you say it is Kahasaniskak. Kahasaniskak. So it's a Cree word, and the name of this bridge and the Dewatnau Bridge is our Cree words. So Kahasaniskak. So yeah, I encourage you to try to learn that word. It's going to be around for a long time. All right, so moving then past where we were at before and just continuing with the presentation, I want to talk a little bit more about the train systems and testings, and maybe I touched on some of this already. I guess I did. The arrival of train number 13 has happened. So I did mention that they come across Canada on rail cars. These are custom-built cars that run on heavy rail. Occasionally, we actually hear from our workforce that has a friend maybe out traveling in Saskatchewan that sends them a text or a picture and says, hey, I saw your train coming across the prairies. It's on its way. So like I mentioned before, we got about 13 more of them to come, and they'll all be in Edmonton by the end of the year. All right, moving to the next slide. This is a picture of the inside of the operation and maintenance facility, so the OMF. You can see that as well. There's some catways on the left side where some of the maintenance is performed and gets access to the roof of the train. You can't see the train immediately beside it, just off of the picture. But a lot of that static testing is ongoing in Kingston and then duplicated in our OMF facility before the trains get out onto the alignment for some further testing. And that's ongoing right now for all of the trains as they arrive. Go ahead and move to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about safety now. So obviously we are in a construction zone for 13 kilometers, and our workforce and the public are top of mind when it comes to safety. I mentioned previously to make sure that you're using the designated walkways. You can see the green sign there in the bottom right. That's a typical sign that you'll see along our alignment. We do our best to try and keep up with the ever-changing environment. I encourage you, if you see something that's not safe, reach out to us and let us know. But we do have a crew of professionals that monitor all of our traffic accommodations and our pedestrian accommodations, and our goal is to keep things as absolutely as safe and easy to navigate as possible in our areas. There will be new signals. I kind of touched on that earlier as well. Watch for those new signal signs as those signals that have been erected right now with the bags covering them. As those bags are removed and the signals go into operation, we'll be installing these signs to help you understand as drivers that it's new and it's now turned on. Just make sure if it's lit, follow it. It's really as simple as it goes. And of course, we don't want you to speed in our construction zone for obvious reasons. And we appreciate that. It's a tight area, and we recognize it's not easy to coexist during construction, but we're really appreciative of drivers that go beyond, even less than the speed, just to keep everybody going at a safe speed through the neighborhoods. Moving on safety a little bit to do with COVID-19. So it's been a challenge. There's no denying working in this environment is a challenge. The last few days have been a really good indicator of, how do you work in 31, 32 degree heat and have to wear a mask? But we have made it mandatory. It's really important to us as a project and as a company to make sure that we're doing everything we can to follow the recommendations of Alberta Health Services and Dr. Henshaw. So I happen to actually be the pandemic coordinator, and I have a direct contact with all of our supervision on site daily. And we've gone to extreme measures, I think, to make sure that our crews understand the importance of following those guidelines. They may not always agree with it. We know that there's, some people don't agree with it, but in order to protect the public and protect themselves, we're asking them to wear masks. Some of the other things that we do, you'll see in the left-hand corner there, the worker is holding a bottle of hand sanitizer. We've provided individual bottles of hand sanitizer to our workers as well, and they're encouraged to carry them on their person when they can, but they're refillable, and we encourage them to just make good use of that. We have on-site nurses. We have a nursing staff of about 3 people across the project. We have safety professionals out there doing inspections and having conversations and encouraging and training our crews on how to be safe. Lots of safety meetings at the beginning of the day. We have a newsletter that goes out every day to talk about where things are at with our fight against COVID and the current statistics that the Alberta Health Services is releasing, and just to provide guidance and good information to our workforce to help keep them safe and thus keep their families safe and overall the citizens of Edmonton. So I have to just take a moment and give kudos to our crews for working in this environment. Nobody expected this, of course, but they've done just an absolutely stellar job of keeping the project moving while having to deal with the safety challenges of dealing with COVID. Moving on to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit more detail now on the Valley Line Southeast in your area, specifically around Bonnie Doon. So, of course, we're familiar with a lot of the businesses in the mall there and the library, Safeway, a lot of frequently frequented, is that a word? I guess one way of saying it. Businesses that we know you guys, residents of Glengordon, are going to go to frequently. So we wanted to show a map in the next slide here of what the access routes you'll have when you're trying to get from the east side to the west side of 83rd Street. So you can see here on the drawing, this is a rendering that you might be familiar with. It's been part of the city's documents since quite a while ago. I'll start on the left. Starting on the left, we've got a new intersection into the mall. That's now been constructed, and it also provides a new connection to Dermott District Park. That intersection, the 4 lines there, it's a square, sure. It's actually meant to show that that's an open pedestrian route through the intersection. So follow those markings, and that's one of the accesses you'll have. At 86th Avenue, that's the old entrance into the Bonnie Doon Mall. Of course, that's now closed. So there's no crossing of 83rd Street there. You'll have to move either north or south to get to 84th Avenue or the new access at Dermott Park. At 84th Avenue, of course, you've got 2 crosswalks there to move east or west on, and then similarly at 82nd Avenue. Now, when you're out and about there, you may notice that the concrete crosswalks are not what you're used to seeing around Edmonton. They're not just paint on the ground and on the asphalt pavement. We are actually installing colored concrete, both colored white bands on the outsides of the crosswalk that would be typically paint, and then infilled with concrete as well of another color. So if you were to follow that color, it's themed and purposely designed to help you navigate to the platform themselves. So those colored crosswalks are called enhanced crosswalks, and they exist anywhere there is pedestrian priority zones. So the project has defined certain areas near stops as a pedestrian priority zone. And as we've built the work, there's been certain things in our design that had to be met when we were designing within a priority zone. So one of those things is the enhanced crosswalks made out of colored concrete. Moving on to the next slide. Give me one second.
That's pretty much it. Thank you, Dallas, for taking us through all the updates from the 13-kilometer alignment. We appreciate it.
No problem.
So just a few, I have one question here. While Dallas is going to answer this question, please feel free to submit questions again through your app or on your desktop or laptop. So the question for you, Dallas, do you have any information on when the sidewalk in front of Glengordon Apartments will be completed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've actually was in conversation with our traffic manager this morning to get an update on the road phasing. So what has to happen there first is the north-south traffic that currently exists needs to move to the west. And what that does is opens up the work area for building those accesses. I'm sure you guys are familiar with right now, the northbound lane of through traffic is using the future drop-off parking area. So we need to move traffic over to the west, and then that'll allow us to open up the work area for the connections, sidewalks, ramps, steps, all that stuff that connects to the building. That work will be starting in the coming weeks. We are targeting to have that complete before the snow flies. So it won't be much longer that, and you'll see our crews out there. So I would watch when you see the traffic flip over to the west side of the roadway closer to the stop. That'll be an indication that we're just a matter of days from starting the work in front of the building. So my team here that's on the call here, Megan, she's not talking, but she's on the call here right now. She'll make sure that the proper notifications are given to you so that you have advanced notification that we'll be doing that. And we'll be working with the building management as well so that they're fully aware. So by the end of this season.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks, Dallas. I don't have any other questions that have come through, but if anyone on the presentation right now has a question or a comment, we'll give you a few minutes, well, a minute or two, so that there isn't this awkward silence, just to submit your question or comment.
Yeah, maybe there's something I can think of that I haven't mentioned yet. I'll just rack my brain here too. I didn't really talk in great detail of the paving stones in downtown. So real quick, I mentioned it briefly when we were looking at the tunnel portal in the Chinatown area. The entirety of downtown right now is well under construction. We're working on all 3 platforms. So there's 3 stops with a platform, 2 platforms, I guess, each. That work is well underway. The concrete track through there is complete, and the majority of the rail is also set. So we're at kind of a 2 more phases of things that need to happen down there. The first is the paving stones. So in the area of 102 Ave, it will not be an asphalt roadway. It will be paving stones with lots of patterns incorporated. The white lines are made out of white paving stones, as an example. There is 1 lane of traffic and 2 lanes of bike path through there as well, plus of course the sidewalks as normal. So all of those are delineated with differing styles of paving stones, all meant to of course integrate together. It's going to look really good. If you've been down there, you'll get a feel for it already. We're expecting to have all of that paving stone laid down by the end of the season as well. I would caution you on any expectations that we'll open it to traffic. That won't be happening this year. There is still a lot of commissioning. So that's the second thing that I said that we need to move into. We need to get in there and put up the overhead catenary system and string those wires. And then that also requires us to do the testing. And when we're testing the live system it's important to recognize that we create an exclusion zone for safety. So anybody working within a certain number of meters of the track must first call into the operations and control center at the OMF facility that we were looking at. They must speak to an individual there and register and then get approval to be within that right of way for the train. And that's, for obvious reasons, very typical in a rail environment and very typical for maintenance workers kind of in the future. But right now, during construction, as we're kind of moving through those phases of commissioning, it's really important that we keep that area clear of our own workforce and thus the general public as well. So we will keep pedestrian access on 102 Ave, but we won't be opening it to vehicle traffic until closer to when the trains go into passenger service.
That's great to know. Yes, please stay alert when you're out there in the construction areas. We had one more question that did come up. This one is actually for me. There will be a link to the presentation. We have been recording it for the entirety, so there will be a link on our website that you can view at a later time, and also it will be emailed to you at the end of this presentation to just be on the cloud. So if you want to view it there or at our website, please feel free to check it out. And with that, thanks, Dallas. I don't think we have any more questions that have come in. Thank you again for joining us on this virtual project update. We understand that construction can be long, and we thank you for your patience and understanding as construction progresses. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to give us a call, 780-224-0964, or email us at info@transitlrt.ca. And you can also check out our website for any of the updates on construction or the train arrivals. We're always here and always happy to hear from you. Thank you, Dallas, and everyone else. Please stay on the page that you're on. As soon as this project update ends, there will be a link that will come up to our survey. We do want to hear from you, so please take 1 to 2 minutes just to fill out the survey that shows up. Thanks again, Dallas, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. It was my pleasure, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.